Wait, you gonna have music on? Well, that didn't work out. Welcome to episode of the Boyd Sunday Sessions. It's the first Sunday session, coming in sort of late, barely still Sunday. But I'm here with producer TJ, and again, I want to welcome you to pretty much one of the inaugural episodes of the Boyd. Some of you guys might remember a time a while back where building motorcycles and my business doing that. And things sort of got topsy-turvy. And anyway, we launched the Boyd. Let me check something out here. We got the music still on? All right. So we've been having a few teething issues here and there with the Boyd, but we're gonna get this all worked out. This is just something where I really wanted to get something launched and at least record an episode. Like I said, this is a Sunday session. Maybe this will be something that recurs. We'll see. Right now, Wednesday nights is the plan to have a live show for the Boyd. Really, the Boyd is crafted as is to be a conversation about things that we're prohibited from talking about, right? So whatever it is that you want to talk about, really. But a lot of the things that we're probably going to talk about are current events, or I don't know. Actually, it's really up to you guys. So if you are watching, leave a comment, and if something sort of sparks a thought in your mind, put the comment down and I'll address it on the next show. If you're watching, I'll be able to address it live, which would be even more fun. Again, it's really to have a conversation, and part of it's sort of therapy for me, because there was a period of time where I was really getting embroiled in like different Facebook discussions and things like that. And some of you guys know about that period, and because you follow me on Facebook, at least I'm hoping some of my friends are watching some of these episodes. But one of the things I've noticed was I was really getting almost addicted, to the point where I was obsessed. Like it would start getting into my mind. Like something I would see, it would be something where I would be sort of obsessed with it, because it would make me think about something, and maybe that's what they were, what some of the things on social media are supposed to do. And some of you guys might have heard about people getting actually addicted to social media and things like that. I think that's a real thing. If gambling addiction's real, social media addiction is real. Because it's like this. I don't know. I don't feel like I have gambling addiction, because I don't like gambling. So that's probably a good indicator. But I can sort of understand, like when you're playing slot machines or something, you get on a roll, especially if you win something, and of course, the nature of the house is going to make it so that you win every once in a while, so it entices you to keep playing. And a lot of, if you do any research on any of these things, you'll find that a lot of what goes into crafting how these machines work play off of your own impulses and this addictive nature. And anyway, social media uses the same techniques, and that's one of the things that I want to talk about on the show, is not only the symptom of the social media addiction that can happen as a result of a lot of novel things sort of coming down the pipeline. So you always have that refresh and something new. Your friends are always posting something new. You're keeping up to date with something. You're getting news or entertainment or whatever it is. And I think more and more people are coming to understand this, what's happening. And we see it a lot with younger people. And you see it all the time, like at restaurants and anywhere where kids are just completely engulfed in some type of electronics, or we as adults or young adults and everywhere, all walks of life, are stuck checking social media. And that's, I feel like, a symptom of something even bigger. And that bigger thing is the advancements that humanity has made in any discipline that you can think of. So as a result, social media doesn't just connect people, it takes advantage of your natural instincts to explore and all of those things. And you can find research that's been done on it, and there's different things. Maybe I can link some of those in the description. But I just want to talk broadly about what it is that broadly about that concept, not whether it's happening or not. I mean, I'm positive it's happening, and I urge you to do some research on it. And if you know something about it, put it in the comments. Again, this is supposed to be a forum for people to share information. I think we live in a world of contradictions, and in a way, this podcast and this forum is a way to navigate some of those contradictions and decide sort of what it is that we want to be as a society. One question I think that's been floating around in my head that I would love to get your answers to, but in a way, I don't really want your answers as much as I want you to think about it. Because I have this sneaky suspicion that, okay, let me put the question out there, and I'll give you my suspicion later. But my question is, what would be your definition of an outstanding person, an amazing person, someone that you would hope to be like a model person within society? And how would you describe that person? And the reason why I sort of prefaced that I was hesitant about having people actually type something is because I really question the honesty of what I would find or what I would get back. And now I'm not trying to say everybody's disingenuous and liars or something like that. What I'm getting at is, I think that there are a lot of social constructions that would manipulate what we would say. Like one of I mean, I'm just trying to just pull some things randomly, like what would our friends think? Or if my boss saw this, what would impress them? Or what sounds smart? Or I don't know. And that's why I really would rather you look at this as a mental exercise and think of it, what is that ideal person? And then think about, well, what values are you using to craft that person? And, go to the root of those values. Where did they come from? And, the reason why I'm asking these things is because I think we need to fundamentally start asking ourselves what kind of people we want to be and what kind of society we want to live in. And look at that as not only, nationally, of course, but globally, et cetera. I mean, we could look at it that way too, but I think we should just start with ourselves and then think about what is it? What kind of world do we want to live in? And I know it sounds hokey pokey and stuff, but if we don't think about those things, someone else with the power to apply their will think of those things for us. And that loops me back to the levels of sophistication that we've attained in all of our different disciplines. So just as the same tricks and the same methods that are used to manipulate you into spending more money at the gambling, at the casino, right, in gambling, are the same techniques they could use in social media to keep you addicted and keep you looking at that screen more. And you might say, well, what difference does it make? Well, you know what difference it makes. When you're looking at that screen, what are you? Right? Your gaze, your attention is commodified. We live in a society where every single thing is commodity. Even me talking to you is eventually, to some degree, by YouTube or by me, I have an incentive to try to commodify this communication to people, just trying to talk to people, right? We think about all this technology as this means to communicate, and then we, of course, have to find a way to bring the profit motive into view, right? And some people might say, well, what's wrong with that? You need profit in order to motivate some things, and I think that's true to some extent. I think there's some things that work within a contradiction if you look at profit as a motive. Feeding the homeless is not necessarily a profitable thing. And what we found is I think we've lost trust. And correct me if I'm wrong, put it down in the comments, please. I think we've lost trust in even charity, right? And I'll bring it back to, I guess you could just broadly lay it down on the altar of capitalism, right? Because at the end of the day, what's the purpose of charity if not to make a quick buck? Because we've seen that over and over again, right? We always see these warnings not to go with certain charities because we know that in the end, we're going to that a big chunk of what we've put out is not going to be applied. So it looks like Tommy is with us. Tommy, what do you think about what I'm talking about? Am I going nuts? I think to prevent me from going nuts, I think that's why I ended up really trying to relaunch this podcast, because what I found was I'd go on Facebook, I'd get in these discussions, and I lost a lot of followers and friends and stuff on Facebook because I went through this phase, and I'm still in it anyway, where I'd post all sorts of crazy hyperbolic things to get people all pissed off. Not really to get people pissed off, but in a way to get them pissed off because I figured they would engage in a conversation, which a lot of times it did. It did instigate some conversations, but I handled a lot of them really poorly. So for those of you out there that were at the receiving end of my snarky, highly asshole influenced diatribes, etc., I'm sorry. Part of that is because sometimes some of these things are so, we live in a complex world, and I'm trying to fit everything into something where someone actually would read it in Facebook. It just doesn't work. And that's the problem. We live in the prophetic future of idiocracy where we can't speak in more than 10-second clips. Otherwise, we don't understand, and we refuse to understand what's happening. And that's where I think we run into a lot of problems. It's a situation where we really have to think about how we know what we know. And now some people will accuse me of sounding a little bit paranoid, but really think about this. So going back to the profit motive, some folks would say, well, James, why should you have this right to broadcast your point of view on some, platform if no one's going to make money off of it? I say, okay, well, fine. I mean, I could come up with a reason, I think socially, that as a society, we should invest in some kind of infrastructure, just like we did with the telephone system, in which we have a utility that we can communicate with each other around the world, that it's not necessarily, I don't know that it necessarily has to be private, and that it necessarily has to, in the same way that it is now, and that it necessarily has to have a profit motive. Because think about the news. Do you think the news wants to give you the truth? Why would they give you the truth? How hard is it to find the truth?
You can't handle the truth.
Yeah, exactly. People can't handle the truth. Now I disagree with that. I think we could handle the truth. We would be disgusted, I bet, at the truth. And we might not even accept what is really happening. It's like the Matrix, happening. Like, you can't accept the reality of the craziness, and some people would rather just jump back in it.
Yeah.
And I hear that a lot. I hear people, I've had multiple occasions. In fact, an old friend reached out today saying they noticed I had a lot of negative stuff on my Facebook, and how do I keep sane with all this negative stuff? And I see a lot of negative stuff. Now, I do post some positive things. If there's like a puppy video or something, I might post that, or something cool, especially animal stuff. I love stuff, or science stuff. So for those folks that love those things that I post, but then hate all the political crap that I post, sorry, that's just the price.
It comes with the territory.
It comes with it. Those are the things that sort of are on my mind, that I'm thinking about.
No filter here.
Yeah, and that's sort of it. Now, I think that this would be a better forum for me to engage with folks than Facebook, because I get frustrated typing in on my phone. And I don't think it, I'm an ex-millennial. I just found out this is new, I guess sort of new, what do you call it, generation category. And where it's not millennials, not quite Gen X, which is already like the smallest, pardon me, the smallest generation out there already. And then they went and split it up because of technology. This and I was born in 78, and so I understand what they're talking about. The millennial generation, from what I understand, and it seems like people are always redefining this stuff, is somewhat defined with by the technology that was around as they were coming of age. I remember in high school, web crawler and things like that. So people my age remember those things. And some folks that were maybe 10 years older than me, that I think would still, like 68, I think, falls somewhere in Gen X somewhere, or the tail end of baby boomer. I don't really remember. But supposedly they didn't necessarily experience technology in the same way and had to go learn it in a different way. They didn't grow up with it as much. I remember my dad was into computers and stuff, and he went down the Atari route with, I guess it would be considered PC. It was back in the late 80s, I'm guessing. And I remember it was Atari ST, and it looked just like an IBM. From the outside, it looked like it, and it had something that looks just like early Windows, but then it went away, and then IBM and Mac, and then all that other stuff kept going. Anyway, I'm on a tangent now. What was my point? Anyway,
welcome to the void.
Yeah, going back. At the end of the day, the profit motive sullied the news. Right? Because the truth is hard to find. If you really wanted to, think about this. How do you know what you know? Right? You know it through the media, through books that you've read, through your family, through whatever, people you trust.
Wikipedia.
The internet, you read stuff. How do you know if it's real? right? I mean, you can only validate so many things yourself, right? So there has to be a level of trust. But at the same time, remember, we've advanced as a civilization to levels of sophistication in any realm to a degree that almost any of us would be lost. So, I mean, you think about whatever simplest job there might be out there. There's a good chance that you could get in the weeds in that job. So, those of you, it looks like it might be a couple folks watching on the Facebook Live. Think of the simplest job that you can think of, and I would venture a guess that there's a way for you to be so detailed at that job that you could actually, there's a difference between failure and being able to do it. There's got to be something. Now, there are some jobs that are so simple. I guess there might be a couple jobs that are so simple that it's either you did it or you failed. And I mean, there's no real nuance. But I would say those are going to be a lot of those jobs have already been automated out. But I don't know. Maybe there are some of those jobs like that where you just basically pull a lever or something, and you can't mess it up, possibly. But going back to the sophistication, the amount of control and of the amount of control of the mechanisms by which you know and understand, and also the ways that you know and understand something. Like, for instance, if a certain philosophy sort of becomes a prevailing philosophy, then that starts to manipulate books and teachings going forward. Like, for instance, before Darwin, the idea, and I don't have all the details, and this is not a university lecture, so don't fault me on not knowing dates and whatever. But basically, before Darwin released his theory of evolution, the concept of social Darwinism, right, naturally, wasn't really in play. Like, it didn't really exist, supposedly, according to historians. Now, they had other extremes, but this idea, this notion that we are not a societal being, that we are really a bunch of individual beings, all fighting for scarce resources. And if you can't survive, then, as Darwin would say, which he actually didn't, if you can't live within that structure, then you go by the wayside, and that's what happens. Thus in nature, thus in society. And before that, there was the thoughts of, community. There was an idea of, like, if you think of pioneer America, that we all worked together. The whole town would come together, and we would all be able to survive together, the community, through the winter, through the summer, through whatever. And it wasn't really people trying to get over on each other. And if it was, those people became sort of ostracized, and that type of ethos was like, you didn't want that kind of person, right? You wanted people that would work communally together. Now, I didn't mean commune as in like a communism system or some communist system or something like that. Maybe, I don't know. Actually, back then, really, what monetary system were they using? If you're a pioneer, and you're one of the settlers, I guess, and there's really, what's the use of money if there's not really a monetary system going on, right? Your prime motive is to survive, right? And in fact, A lot of, I mean, we hear about wampum and whatever, and in these, from what I understand, are very simplistic ideas of Native American potential monetary system. But really, from the from some newfound things, and from just going back in history, and if you are reading, or reading some of the writings of the time when they describe, because actually in the beginning, when Columbus and some of those folks were coming over, there were a couple people that would actually scribe for the trip, and some of them wrote some pretty detailed notes about what was going on. Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States has some excerpts from those, and you can hear what they wrote, and they would tell of a culture that didn't revolve around this notion of scarcity, this notion of that you are an individual surviving against the other individuals. That was not a philosophy that existed. And in fact, one of the surprising things that he said was how many times, or how many instances in these old writings, that they said that children and adults that were either found or somehow ended up in the care or possession of the Indians, a lot of them refused to go back to Western culture, and in fact rather stay in the Indian culture, because they didn't have the same anxieties that they had in the Western culture, with what in essence was this social Darwinist approach that if you couldn't make it, then you might as well just die, because what's your utility to anybody, right? And so this notion has crafted the mindset of a lot of society into almost thinking that no other kind of culture could exist. In fact, there's a really cool clip of an Aboriginal person from Australia or New Zealand, I can't remember, in that area, and they were talking about before the white man came, there was no such word as please or thank you or any of those things, because everybody understood that they were helping and sharing with each other, and it was a concept that it just, the fact that you didn't even have those words. Now, I'm not saying that we should move to that system. I mean, that would be interesting, but I'm saying there are alternatives to that socialistic Darwinist approach. And in fact, they got Darwin all wrong anyway. Darwin wasn't talking about who, when they say survival of the fittest, that's not really the reality.
Preach.
Right? It's not the reality. Because what is fit? What does fit really even mean? If you think about it.
It's a Honda.
True. There is the Honda fit. When you think about being fit for the environment, and on that note, I'm going to take a quick break. Think about, what does it mean to be fit for the environment, and why is it wrong? I'm going to tell you. I'm going to explain why it's wrong. To just think that those that survive are the fittest, simply the fittest for that environment. Okay, and then we'll discuss it some more in a couple minutes. All right, guys, welcome back. Welcome back, and thank you again for joining us on The Void. Again, relaunching this podcast just to get a conversation going. So please join us, or at least participate by putting down a comment or something like that. So before the break, I asked people to think about what it meant to be to the environment. And that in of itself becomes sort of a questionable And one of the examples that really stick out in my mind is the peacock. Think about the peacock. Can you really say, let's say if you lived in a dark, dense jungle in India where tigers, and there used to be lions back before humans killed them all, and other carnivores that would be able to eat something small, a little bit larger than a chicken, but smaller than a turkey. So we're not talking about emu-sized animal. We're talking about, a peacock. You guys seen peacocks before, right? Think about, you got this dense foliage everywhere. You've got all these nooks and crannies for these things to be, for everything to be hiding, the tigers and whatever to be hiding. And think about a male peacock. It's got this huge train of feathers, right? And in order to fuck, it has to do some crazy shit. That peahen mind has forced over time the peacock to move out of, like, think about what would be a fit animal. If you're a bird and you live in the jungle, how would you be fit to live in the jungle, right? You'd probably, if you've got some ideas, throw them in, throw your comments down. I would assume you would be camouflaged, right? If you're in the jungle, you probably want to look like the jungle so you don't get eaten, right? You probably want to be quiet, right? And you probably want to be as inconspicuous as possible, I would imagine, right? And if you look at the peahen, that she fits that description pretty much. So brownish color, fits in with the leaf matter at the floor of the forest, doesn't make a lot of noise, is able to hide pretty easily. But look at the peacock, look at the male, right? Isn't camouflaged at all, is noisy as fuck, and he has to he has to leave the jungle, right, where he could be hiding and eating worms and chilling and doing his own peacock thing. No, he has to, if he wants to do it, right, what does he have to do? He has to go find a clearing, right? So get out of hiding. He has to open this gigantic fan that he could barely walk with. And he has to make a whole bunch of noise. And maybe he gets fucked. You know what I'm saying? How's that fit? That's not fit. Now, and I think the moral of the story goes that was wrong to begin with. That was a misinterpretation of what Darwin was really getting at. What really happens is it's your DNA surviving. And how does it survive? Richard Dawkins wrote a whole book called The Selfish Gene. And it's an interesting perspective. I didn't read the whole book, but one of the I guess main ideas you could think of from it is that you've heard of your body as a vessel and all this stuff, and it sounds real spiritual and stuff, but really you are the result of a set of instructions, and your set of instructions is the general set of instructions for human, right? Your dog has the general set of instructions for dog. Otherwise, your dog would be not a dog, but would be something else. So whatever else you have, that had that set of instructions. Now, of course, there are little tiny detailed instructions that make it your dog, your cat, you and not me and not someone else, right? But at the end of the day, it's a set of instructions. And when we say a species survives or something like that, it's really that batch of instructions that equates to this set of stuff. Really, if you think about it, you could say, well, the being, the animal, the person, whatever it is with DNA, which on a whole other episode that we should talk about, the fact that all living things have this trait in common, that we are all connected through this trait of the instruction set of DNA. That's important, because think about life itself, what you are. If we think about all the way down, right? Let's think back to science class. What even are you? You're a bunch of atoms, right, that are linked together to make molecules, and those molecules link together to make, cell components, not even cells yet, right? And these are atoms and molecules and things arranged in certain ways that interact with each other in certain ways that really work off chemical processes, right? And we keep extrapolating that from cell componentry, right? I'm not even talking about organelles yet. I'm talking about like membrane pieces and stuff, right? And then the componentry of the organelles, and then the cell itself, and then the cell collection to the organ, and then the whole being. Think about all of those things. At what point is what in that is life? What part is alive? Where does the life part go from when we're talking about are atoms alive? Because we know, like, this glass is made of atoms. We don't say the atoms are alive. The atoms that we're made out of, are they alive or not alive, right? And most of us would say they're not alive, right? But the atoms that join together to make molecules, are the molecules alive? And most of us would say, no, those molecules aren't necessarily alive. They're just molecules that exist in your body or whatever part of it, right? Okay, so when those molecules interact together to form chemical reactions, is that where life is? Is life simply a set of chemical reactions and electrical signals, right? So even your thoughts, right? You take the wrong meds and you are not you. So what is you? I mean, this kind of, anyway, let's go back to fucking, right? I mean, let's just face it, right? So going back to survival of the fittest, again, it's a misnomer. Why the fuck would we have peacocks if it's survival of the fittest? That's not fit. It's not fit. Think about it. It's not fit. And there's other examples of that around where the male, in order to compete for the eye of the female, and whatever's directing that, mind you, why? What is it about the peahen that makes it want the male peacock to do this big ass shit? Is it to show, I mean, in so many ways? I mean, I don't know that the peahen is thinking literally. I mean, without anthropomorphizing this, right? What does that mean? Without putting your own human brain into the brain of a bird, right? Why would that be the pressure that the males are under, right? And you didn't even expect this bomb. How does that relate to current society? Think about that.
Oh, did he just drop a mic?
Well, I'll just whet your appetite. I mean, I got some ideas that are crazy, and it'll piss a lot of people off. I'll tell you what, Jordan Peterson is going to cry
Get him.
when I drop some of these truths.
Oh, the truth bomb.
Because let's face what's going on here. Humans, I believe humans are by nature, cooperative beings that work together. Okay. We as human, we all know that the human form as it stands now, and even millennia past, okay, the Homo sapien by itself is pretty lame, right? We don't run very fast compared to other animals, right? We don't see real well compared to other animals, and we don't hear real well. We don't smell real well. Actually, we don't do anything at all very well. We sort of suck at living in this earth by ourselves, right? Like you can't take on a lion, okay, by yourself. That's why all these libertarians out there, like rugged individuals. Well, without technology, alone, with nothing, can you fight the lion? But with your buddies, I think you could fight the lion. You know what I mean? And that simply is the story of humanity. We are pack beings. We work with each other. And one of the biggest breakthroughs, I think, that really helped push me over the edge to this thought process as a default for humans. Now, I'm not saying there aren't the people that will get over on you and that aren't community based, that would fuck you over in order to benefit themselves. There's plenty of that, right? And that's why I posed that initial question way back. What is an outstanding person to you? Who is a model citizen to you? What is model society to you? Because I think we have two conflicting philosophies in society, and we really need to choose. I don't think they really live together very well. This social Darwinist idea that if you can't survive, you die. That's just nature's way. You're poor for a reason. It's just because you just aren't of the mindset, or you just don't have the gumption, or you just don't have the will, or blah, blah, blah. The market just is spoken, and you're just not worth it. Man, sorry, you just suck. And so die, right? And then there's the other side where we have I believe for most of us, now there are some psychopaths out there, which not just clinical, just people that are on the scale, because it is a spectrum nowadays anyway. I mean, there was a time when it wasn't, I guess. I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist or whatever, psychologist. Weigh in if you're trained. Write some comments on there if you can. And again, this is a place for us to exchange all that we know. I think a lot of us are smarter than we think, but at the same time, again, we live in contradictions, right? We're smarter than we think, but we're also not as smart as we think. So it depends on the situation, right? We have a situation where we feel inadequate. I think that the structures within some of our societal structures make us feel inadequate. It's a celebrity worship, the hierarchical system of everything, like where you work is a hierarchical system, right? Politics, everything. It's not a something where we're equals to each other. There's always somebody calling some shot over somebody else. And in the end, that I think makes us think that we can't necessarily render our opinion on something. But at the same time, we also have something called Dunning-Kruger effect, where a lot of times we think we know way more than we do, because the less you know about something, the more likely it is that you think that you know more about it than you really do. That's really hard to, I mean, I think, look it up. I think it'll be better for you to read it yourself. Read the actual study. It's pretty cool. The idea being that, for example, I mean, I think a lot of us have experienced this, and I always, I think this affects me and prohibits me from wanting to do things or think things. Is that you've run into the musician or artist, or I don't know, anything. Someone wants to be a doctor or something, and like they really don't, or maybe they are speaking about an area of expertise that you have, and they're so wrong, but they know so little that they think they're right and they think they're an expert. If that makes any sense. Dustin. All right, so Dustin's adding in. So Dustin's saying on our Facebook Live. So I think going back to libertarians. Libertarians believe in freedom of association. That's also a First Amendment right. You're conflating people who believe in the rights of individuals with cooperations. With cooperation. No, I'm not really. You still have rights with cooperation. You can still have individualism. You can still be an individual while cooperating. It's the idea of, as far as the libertarians, whatever, sure. The association, I guess, if you wanted to roam in your pack, you could choose your pack, I suppose, and freely associate within those packs if you had a libertarian tribal mentality, I guess. I don't know. Dustin, could you clarify that? Is it you would still be an individual working for yourself or communally within the tribe, or you would associate as an individual with tribes where you don't have to fight the lion alone? I was throwing libertarian into the notion that it doesn't necessarily jive with the origin sort of humanity as we emerged from, in a way, emerged from nature, because there really is. If you think about it, we've again, another contradiction. We live within this great contradiction of living within nature, the natural state of the flesh meat of who we are, the chemicals and the electrical impulses that make us who we are. Again, well, who are you then? Is there really an ethereal you? I think that's a tangent anyway. But think about this. The story of Phineas Gage, that's an old story. Phineas Gage, I think he's a railroad worker. There was an accident on the railroad, and a railroad spike went up through his brain, up through his skull. I think it went through his jaw and up through his hole, made a hole in his skull, went through a portion of his brain. And after that, he was still alive. He survived, but he was a completely different person and didn't remember certain people. His personality was completely different. His interests were different. He was simply a different person altogether. So at the end of the day, who are you? If we shoved a railroad spike and jumbled your brain, would you be a different person? Because we physically jumbled your brain. And I don't know. Just chew on that when you're driving to work, and then come back to me about what's it called? I can't remember what I was saying. Anyway, going back to the fittest. So that idea about the fittest is already wrong, and it's really about who gets to hump the most and whose babies make it, and of those babies, who humps the most. So in the peacock sense, the ones that impress the most females by doing these outlandish things that the females want, they get to hump the most, right? Pardon me. Which is different, though, than, let's say, the lion. Look at the lion. Unfortunately, Dustin wasn't able to clarify too much. But I'm sure I was just really poking fun at libertarian. Honestly, we're going to have an episode of how the libertarian idea is just as idealistic as the communist idea. The idea that you, like, for instance, for communists out there, anybody that's thinking, Stalin, Mao, if you read, right, the Communist Manifesto, Ooh, Marx. Go read it. I dare you, read it. Actually read it. How do you have a stateless, classless society when you have a dictatorial, authoritarian, crazy state? To me, that means you didn't actually achieve communism. But of course, Jordan Peterson, probably Dustin too,
Coming for you, Jordan.
would say, well, that's the most arrogant thing you could ever possibly say. If you were Stalin or Mao, then you would have done better if it would have been your shoes. And like, yeah. And look up Jordan Peterson. It sort of sounds like that. Sounds like Kermit the Frog. Everybody knows that he sounds like that. Anyway, but yeah, that crap. The reason why it's not real, and I'm not saying we should do that we should move to communism. I'm not saying that. I'm just pointing out how silly the people that try to claim that those guys were communists. That doesn't jive with Marx's, at least not Marxist communists. I mean, I don't know what kind of communist. It's a different authoritarian communist.
Don't jive with Marx.
Anyway, whatever. Don't jive with Marx. At the end of the day. Damn it, now what? Anyway, yeah, imagine classless, stateless. We don't need a government because we all just simply, I guess, just share with each other based on needs and based on those things. And especially right now, that thought of that even being a reality is, I think, so foreign. It would be such a foreign notion, I think, that it just is an idealistic utopia. And I contend that the libertarian fantasy is equally idealistic utopian fantasy.
Xanadu.
But anyway, that's another topic. But I don't want this to go too much longer for the Sunday session. I mean, we're already dumping into Monday, and I do want to do a live show on Wednesday. So I would love for you, by the way, very unique people, because there are only a few of you in this entire earth. Think about how special you are, that you tuned in to the Sunday session live on the Void. Lucky, right? But
right.
Hey, with your help, this will spread around and we'll all start thinking about some of these things. But anyway, what was I leaving you with? Oh, the whole peacocks versus lions. Let's think about this. So we talked about peacocks not being fittest, and there's this sort of motivation for the, how do they get to continue the lineage? How does that selfish DNA instruction set, how does it push its vessel along to keep the species alive, and to hopefully, I guess, dominate to the best that it can, or proliferate? I don't know. I mean, what is it? Is that instruction, that notion to continue proliferating, is that also written into the DNA itself? I don't know. But let's look at, and this is where I'm gonna loop this back to a societal phenomenon that we can see right now. Here in a second. Okay, so talk about the peacocks. If we look at other animal groups, so I mentioned lions, right? If we look at how do they get to continue, right? How do they get to procreate? We know that the male lions fight each other, and then they take control of the whole harem, or the whole pride, basically. And it's a winner take all situation, right? And I would contend, I mean, there's a lot of situations like that. We see a lot of mammals that do that, right? So not only carnivores, of course, we see bighorn sheep, all manner of antlered animals, a lot of physical dominance equals procreation. Whereas in insects, in birds, I'm trying to think if there are I'm trying to think what mammals might, because the mammals aren't really big display animals, really. I mean, mammals aren't really. Can you think of anything, producer TJ? A flashy mammal. If you think about it, put it in the comments. A flashy, some mammal that does not fight for dominance, that does a display only to attract the female. I don't know. Anyway, but this is why it's important. And this is why it goes back to society, because I would argue that for a long period of time in human history, the method for continuation of the species was akin to any other mammal. Really, it was a dominance play. The biggest, most rugged male takes over the tribe and gets all the females, or it just becomes at some point it was a physical dominance and then became a power dominance, and probably to some degree now it still is in some ways, because people would say, and please women weigh in on this, there's a lot of psychoanalysis into what it is that motivates women to like men, with certain men, in who they are. Now, some might be looking at it might be solely physical, right? And there are women that are attracted to the dudes that are like the Cro-Magnon, like the lion, right? That will go and beat up the other lion and take over the harem. There are women that are more like Peacock, who will have their own notion, their own desire of what a man should be, regardless of whether that makes fucking sense or not. Whether it survives in this world or not, that's the man I want. Okay? And I want to leave you with this, because I think this is where Jordan Peterson will crap his pants, because
coming for you again, fool.
I think it was 2010. I believe it was 2010 that the Dalai Lama said that the Western woman, or something about Western women, can change the world, or something to that effect. I don't remember the exact quote.
Let's dedicate a whole episode just to that.
I should have looked that up. Yeah, so we'll dedicate an episode. Yeah. And a lot of people
just think about that one.
A lot of people think it's the Western woman, like in a feminist notion that from this West, what's her name from like some Daenerys Targaryen or whatever her name is, will come and free the kingdoms or something. And I don't think that's it. I think there's more. It has more to do with where we are evolutionarily than it does to do with the notion of necessarily that a special woman will necessarily come out and save the world. Now, maybe, hey, if you're doing it, hurry the fuck up.
Diana Prince, where are you?
Damn, right? I mean, okay, so women, especially you young women, because it's your generation that's going to be on. I mean, I'm telling you, the other generation that done made the mess, they ain't doing shit to fix it.
Okay? Shit.
Nothing. So it's going to be on you. If you care about your kids, if you don't have kids, I don't have kids, I care about your kids or their future. I mean, I'm gonna be dead by the time they grow up. So why should I care, right? Because there's something bigger than me, right? And I hope that everybody feels that way. You know, I would rather plant a tree than just simply plant some corn, because I think it makes sense for our species, right? And maybe I'm thinking way too much into it, but I think we all need to think about it a little bit more. But anyway, I think there's a lot going on. Think about those things. About the peacock versus the lion, and how the Western woman can change the world. If the Dalai Lama is prophetic, and I believe he is, but that was a long time ago.
Was a while ago.
2010.
Sheesh.
In the last 8 years, how much has really changed in
The whole world has gone to shit.
a lot of things?
Everything's
about that.
different, pretty much.
Yeah, a lot of stuff's different. Okay, a million things to talk about. I'm really glad that we have so much to talk about, but I'm going to be ending this Sunday session. And I want to thank you guys for joining. Please remember to put a comment down. The YouTube link is in. Oh, I don't think I put it in the. I'll put it in the description. It's in the previous video, and because I would check it on YouTube. Those of you that are on Facebook Live, there's no music and stuff. There's music. Got title track. I got all sorts of stuff. You can see. Oh wait, no, we've got infinity screen.
Shout out to the infinity screen
on Facebook Live right now. And so YouTube, I don't think you would have the infinity screen on YouTube.
It's not on YouTube.
No infinity screen view on YouTube. So a little bit different view on YouTube. Eventually, I'm going to have edited archive versions of this. So you have to hear all the rambling part. You can just hear about how the peacocks fuck and that kind of thing. If you want to skip to that part.
We know that's what y'all here for. For the peacocks.
What else? I don't know. And yes, please spread the word about it. And in fact, get the smartest people you know. Get them involved. And it's not a challenge, because I'm not trying to say I'm smart. I'm trying to say get them involved, because I want them to weigh in. Because why not have a place where we have like all the smartest people weighing in on stuff? And then if we have this smart guy that doesn't agree with this smart girl, or whatever, vice versa, whoever, I don't care, and they can battle it out, and then we can figure it out. We can critique it maybe. Now, let's try to keep things civil. I know that word doesn't mean as much today as it did. I don't know when. I'm already shitty enough on my Facebook feed, so just be nice in the comments especially on YouTube. I mean, Facebook too. Everybody, just be nice.
Just be nice.
Be nice. So we're supposed to learn and grow and talk. And this is a whole way for me to not be so snarky and such an asshole. I'm really trying to change. I think together we can all change and be the change we want to see. And what else? Anyway, soon there'll be a Patreon and that kind of thing. You'll see it, and hopefully, if you can support it, I would love to do this. I would love to do a morning show, so you can listen live on your way to work and call in, and I don't know, say what's on your mind on the morning drive, because I know in the capitalist structure that we're working within, you have to spend a lot of time, most of you, some of you don't, if you have a work from home job, spend a lot of time away from your families, commuting, which is wasted time. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, we refuse to invest in public transit infrastructure here that actually would work for the people. Whatever, we don't care. Anyway, be sure to join us Wednesday, 10 p.m. It'll be another live show. And every once in a while, I'll drop another session. But until next time, I bid you all farewell. Thank you for joining the board.
Adieu, good people.